Ultimate One Piece Power Ranking. So this video is basically me just saying my opinions on the One Piece power scaling in the series. So basically, for any One Piece scenario I do, this will be the scale I'll be using. And that's pretty much it, so let's just get in the rankings. Low tier, we have Usopp, who was able to tank a headbutt from ulti, but got pretty easily destroyed and was basically useless. Then we have Buggy, who is stated to be in the world's strongest class, meaning he should make this tier list. Then we have Doflamingo, who could take on Gear 4 Luffy with his Devil Fruit Awakening, but gets power creeped pretty badly. You have Inuarashi and Nekamamushi, who took on, in their base at least, where they took on Jack and didn't die, which is decently impressive. Then we have Sparrow, who did well on the Onashigima raid, Onashigashima, and basically was able to do pretty well against and defeat Carrot. Then we have Cracker, who did better than Doflamingo against Gear 4 Luffy, who was even stronger than against Doflamingo. Then we have the moon forms of Nekamamushi and Inuarashi, who should be a level above their previous selves, but probably not like a tier. And then we have Smoothie, who has really vague feats, but she should be above at least Sparrow, and probably even Cracker, as she is the second highest bounty.
In upper low tier, we have Nami, who could take out ulti, but ulti was weakened by Mazer Cannon, so it wasn't full power ulti. You then have Crocodile, who did well in Marineford and even stopped the Kainu for a brief moment. You then have this Tubber, who controlled the Pacifistas and also held his own against Kizaru for a little bit, but got pretty easily defeated. You have Brook, who could hold his own against Big Mom in Whole Cake, which is pretty impressive, actually. You then have Page 1 and her ulti, and those two are pretty powerful, as they're able to actually press base Luffy, who's suppressed, who should be on par, if not superior, to his Gear 4 self against Katakuri. You have Katakuri, who should be above all of his siblings, and again took on Snake Man and Luffy and did pretty well. You then have Sasaki, who did really well against Frankie, but Frankie definitely won that fight, pretty high diff. You have Robin, who could take on Black Maria, but needed the help of Sanji to win. Apu, who should be relative to the other members of the Supernovas, at least at Wano, including Hawkins, who could take on Killer, who had just taken on Kaido and done decently. Black Maria is just above Nico Robin because she needed the help to take her. She also could damage Sanji to a decent degree before his Infrajambe amp. Who's Who could take on Jinbei, but he doesn't win and he gets mid-diff. Frankie, who could defeat Sasaki, probably could beat Who's Who, as he wins pretty decently over Sasaki, even if it was high diff. Drake should be somewhat close to Hawking's power, who could take on Killer, and Killer has good feats against a Kaido in base and in hybrid form, or dragon form. Jack, who should be above all the other Topi Roppo by a pretty good degree. And then there's Chopper, who could damage Queen, so she probably could just maul and defeat Jack. Hawkins, who could take on Killer and hold his own in a decent degree, and Killer had just done some decently well against Kaido. And then we have the revolutionary captains, including Ivankov, who could actually do pretty decently against two admirals. But they're all ganging up on them, so they're not at the same level as them. And then we have a Gecko Moria, who could take on a Kaido, who is after God Valley, which is pretty decent as a feat.
Here we first have Kaku, who could hold his own against the Seraphim with Zoro and Luffy's help, though he is blitzed and off-guarded by Sanji and put in a bubble. We then have Jesus Burgess, who could take on Sabo and do pretty well, even though he was defeated. We have Magellan, who could defeat Blackbeard and his crew, but he was also off-guard and not expecting a poison Devil Fruit and could have just beaten him with negating it with the Darkness Fruit. Queen, who could do well against Sanji, but Sanji was mentally nerfed, and when he got in for Jambe, he stomped him pretty badly, mid to high diff. Killer, who's able to do well against Dragon Kaido and damage him with internal attacks. Boa, who might actually be higher, as she's able to actually affect Blackbeard with her ability of love and power and stop him and just turn him to stone, which only affects people who have weaker Haki shown against Law. And basically her Haki's strong enough to where Blackbeard can't even negate the ability, which is really impressive, but she's also pretty much defeated by Blackbeard, and if it wasn't for Kobe, she probably would have died. We then have Bonnie, who's pretty powerful and did well against Saturn, even if she lost pretty soundly. Vista, who could take on a suppressed Mihawk, and then Jozu, who could take on the Admirals, as well as take a slash from a Mihawk trying to test Whitebeard, but due to the Breath of All Things, we don't know if it was a full power slash against Jozu. We have Ace, who was able to stalemate Aokiji, and though he loses to Akainu, and Blackbeard, who is right above him, as it was an extreme diff fight. We then have Kingu, no one can damage lower with his Flames on, as it's comparable to Kaido's durability, which is pretty insane. Jinbei could damage him with Fishman Karate, and he's also just pretty strong and should be able to defeat Queen due to beating Who's Who pretty badly. We then have Sanji, who's able to defeat Queen pretty blatantly with Infrajanbe with like mid to high diff. Yasop, who should be close to Lucky Roo and the others, as his crew is the most balanced crew. And then we have Momonosuke, who could, with his Boro Breath, damage Green Bull pretty badly. We then have Kaido and Big Mom and God's Valley, as they're able to do pretty well against Roger and even Whitebeard and survive. Marco was able to fight King and Queen at the same time and do really well, though he does lose pretty badly at the end. Kid and Law together are able to take down Big Mom, so they should be close to the top of this tier. We then have Lucky Roo, which is faster than even Shanks, but just doesn't have the AP to really take out people in the higher tier. We then have Kuma, who's able to nearly one-tap and blitz Saturn, though Saturn's durability is pretty bad. You could just argue that Saturn was off guard, as he wasn't expecting Kuma to be there. And then we have Weevil, who some people think has comparable strength to Prime Whitebeard. Though it's probably not true, it's still pretty insane people would think that, though Green Bull's able to defeat him, so you wouldn't really make the next tier.
Start off upper mid tier, we have Sabo, who's able to survive an encounter with the Goroseis and run away, but he just has no AP feats that are too impressive besides clashing with an Admiral, which the Admirals are in this tier. We then have Lucci, who's able to do decently well against Gear 5 Luffy, but he loses pretty badly still, mid to high diff. We then have the Seraphims, who did pretty well in Egghead, and even scared Blackbeard, talking about S-Hawk. But they're still not too crazy, as Luffy was only in Gear 4, and Zoro didn't use King of Hell. Though they are stalemating Lucci, so they should be above him. We then have Big Mom, who could take on Kid and Law together and nearly win, which is pretty impressive, and Kaido's able to stalemate her for a long time. We then have Odin, who was able to nearly take out a Dragon Kaido back in the past, who should be able to take out, like, Kaido, at least in his base currently. We then have Kobe, who in Film Red, which should have accurate power betrayal, at least from Oda's statement. He's able to basically keep up with Zoro with King of Hell, which is pretty impressive. We then have Luffy in base, who's able to do land a kick on Kizaru and hold his own against Hybrid Kaido. We then have Rayleigh, who should be above, as he does better against Kizaru than base Luffy. We then have Shanks and Mihawk from their fighting days. As though Shanks was scarred by Blackbeard, he was likely off guard and probably still warded him off anyway. And they're also probably stronger than Rayleigh, as they're the strongest swordsman in the world, including Rayleigh, like a younger one than the current one, so it's pretty impressive. We then have the Admirals, Fujitora, Green Bull, Aokiji, and Akainu in this section, as they're able to do well in Marineford and defeat Ace and all these other characters. Though Green Bull nearly gets one-tapped by Yamato in base, which is just insane, but they're still pretty strong, and Akainu could kill Ace, so, you know. Then we have Dragon Kaido, who does decently against Gear 5 Luffy, though is overwhelmed. We then have Snake Man, Gear 4 Conqueror's Coding in Egghead, who's able to stalemate Kizaru, with Kizaru right next to him, due to being fast enough to take out that Luffy, though it is decently close. And then King of Hell Zoro is able to take out Lucci, at least probably, likely, as Jinbei's just trying to find him. I mean, he probably did take out Lucci. And then Yamato was able to hold their own against a suppressed Hybrid Kaido and do better than even Gear 4 Snake Man, surprisingly.
So now we're talking about high tier, the big boys. Dragon should be able to at least be able to defeat at least the lower characters, as he's planning on taking on the Gorosei, so he has to be pretty strong. Beckman's in the same class as Shanks, and scared off Kizaru, which is pretty impressive, even if he didn't defeat him blatantly. Shiryu was able to pierce through Garp and is supposedly the second strongest of the Blackbeard pirates, though I would disagree with that statement. We then have Gear 5 Luffy, who could actually make the next tier, as he's in Film Red on par with Shanks, but due to his time limit and barely defeating Kizaru, he can't really make the next tier. We then have Aokiji and Akainu post time skip, who got Hockey Bloom, with Akainu being slightly higher. And they're pretty strong, obviously, as like Aokiji's number 2 on Blackbeard's crew, and Akainu's the Fleet Admiral, so he has to be at that Fleet Admiral level. Shanks' pre-time skip was stated in Databook Blue to be able to blitz Akainu, even post-time skip Akainu, even from the pre-time skip, meaning he has to be pretty strong. Kaido gets stronger over the time skip and would probably surpass Shanks from the pre-time skip due to them getting stronger. And then we have Blackbeard, who is the strongest pirate in the world, probably putting him even above Kaido due to his, Darkness Devil Fruit. Finally, Whitebeard with meds is pretty strong, being able to clash evenly with Shanks and is the world's strongest pirate. First, we're starting off this tier with Kong. Kong is pretty strong as he's an even higher rank than Garp and Sengoku, meaning he should be even above some of the fleet admirals, but he doesn't have enough feats to put him at the level of Garp. And then the next person we have is Sengoku as an old man. He's pretty strong, being a Garp rival, and also being pretty much able to threaten and not be too worried about Shanks. Then we have Garling, who will likely fight Shanks or Mihawk and do pretty well, but he's just being set up narratively to be pretty strong. We then have the Gorosei, who, though Saturn has some pretty bad feats on Egghead, are, Shanks is, telling them, yeah, you guys need to help me, defeat Blackbeard, meaning he thinks that they could defeat Blackbeard, meaning all of them should or have to be able to damage Blackbeard, the world's strongest pirate, or at least close to that, meaning they have to be able to damage that level of pirate, meaning they should be in this tier. So you could argue them into the past tier of high tier. Then we have Blackbeard, who's being set up as one of Luffy's Beyond Kaido rivals, as he thought he could defeat Luffy, who defeated Kaido, and he didn't even know about the nerfs Luffy had, meaning he thought he could just beat Kaido, which is pretty insane. Then we have Shanks, who does better against his member of the Supernova trio in Kid than Blackbeard against Law, as Blackbeard jumps Law, and Law still is able to hold his own a little bit, though he still stomps it pretty badly. And then Shanks literally one-taps Kid and Killer, which is just better. I mean, he probably got stronger over the time skip. We have Mihawk, who's just stronger than Shanks due to being the world's strongest swordsman, and Garp, who is just insanely powerful and pretty much nearly one-tapped Aokiji, which is just insane power, and also took on half of Blackbeard's crew and did pretty well, which is just insane power. And the final or second to last tier, we have the old generation tier, with Scopper, Gabon, and Rayleigh being here, as Rayleigh with his conquerors as an old man scared off Blackbeard due to his feats in his prime, and he could have actually beaten him if he was in his prime. We then have Gold Shiki, who is a captain unlike Rayleigh, meaning he had his own will, and he was confident enough to take on Roger, even if he had a crew of 50 compared to his, one ship. We then have Stussy Buckingham, who likely did well in God Valley and is still an old-gen pirate captain or captain figure, meaning she would probably surpass Rayleigh at least. We then have Sengoku, who is a Garp rival, and we have old Roger, who was sick, as when he was sick, he was relative to Roger without it using his Devil Fruit with pure hockey, meaning if he used his Devil Fruit, he would probably lose due to his sickness. Then we have Garp, who should be rival more to a healthy Roger than a sick one. We then have Whitebeard, who could have added his Devil Fruit to overpower the sick Roger, and is stated to be Roger's strongest opponent, though Rox is likely more powerful, as basically he was able to take on the combined force of Garp and Roger at the same time, which is just insane, and possibly even Whitebeard switching sides, which is just madness and power. Finally, we have Roger, who isn't sick, as he was stated in the first chapter that he got all the power in the world that he could ever get, meaning even beyond Rox. In God tier, we have Emu. So basically, Emu is going to be the last world government villain, meaning he's going to have to take on Luffy and Blackbeard when they're at their strongest, meaning likely beyond Roger. This is when they're going to surpass Roger and be able to actually find the One Piece and fight over it. Meaning Emu is going to have to be stronger than both Luffy and Blackbeard, even at their best, to fight both of them at the same time. Or at least be on par with them. Meaning beyond even Roger. He's gonna have to fight two Rogers, which is just insane. Emu's also able to just make the 5 girls say at the same time bow down and basically admit inferiority, all 5 at the same time, which is just insane power. That's just why he has to be above the old gen. So that's the video. Please subscribe so I can make more power rankings, and I will also explain myself more in the comment section, so comment any questions or points you disagree with in this video. Thanks for watching. See you guys later. Bye!